Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the History of Fan Anime. I'm your host, William Chow, and in today's episode is kind of a different episode. I'm going to start a new topic, and I usually don't talk about politics, but I'm going to talk about soft power. So, there's a little sort of a different topic and how it relates to basically other Asian countries and whatnot, and we'll sort of just cover some basic points. All right. Before I begin, I wanted to obviously remind everyone to go down below, click like, and click subscribe. They need to help out the YouTube algorithm. Put a comment below and what you think. Maybe you think I forgot a name or something. Maybe throw that in the comments below, and add some more comments there. That always helps out. If you like to help out financially, I also have the super thanks as well as the PayPal and Patreon links below. That gives you access to the special content episodes I've made for the subscribers. Again, I've just added 2 new episodes recently. I recreated a Name That Tune game show that I did back in 2006 for Anime Evolution. So I put that on there, so I give you a try at naming some tunes, and also put out sort of a highly controversial sort of episode about what a Super Nintendo Game Doctor does, and some of the stuff that I had inside the storage box of goodies that was inside that. So again, stuff I can't show you on YouTube here, obviously because of the content and the the topic. So again, if you want to get those access episodes, consider helping out on the PayPal and the Patreon. If you want to have a sort of advanced look at what the episodes are about, go down below. There's a link to all the episodes of the History of Fan Anime as well as the bonus episodes. All right, so do check that out. All right, so today's episode is this is how about soft power. Now, basically, this sort of geopolitical term. It refers to basically how much influence culturally, economically, and whatnot does one country have on another country or other countries, okay, outside their own screen, right? And so, so when we think of like a U.S. soft power, obviously being in Canada, we're literally like a U.S. state. So, except we just don't, admit that we are. But, we are heavily influenced by products, the culture, the things that are called, and even a little bit of politics. But we still like to, retain our own nationality for various different other means. But what I basically mean is that, when you think of U.S. things, okay, so for example, let's think of brands, okay, names, all right. What really comes to mind? Well, you think of some big ones like, Apple, Microsoft. You think of brands like Calvin Klein, Nike, Adidas. You think of food chains. You think of like McDonald's. You think of KFC. A lot of these places, will have outlets all over the world. Okay, so that's just an indication of how far they've reached, and how their product branding has reached everywhere. Okay, you think of things like, as I said, culture and popular media, for example. How much are people willing to partake in something that's not normally their culture, right? So, for example, if you think of American music, just about everyone knows who, let's say, Michael Jackson is, Elvis Presley, Madonna, Frank Sinatra, for example. They're known worldwide, for all the things to do. Okay, so that's another thing that a lot of people around the world would know. Another thing is basically the big screen. Obviously, a lot of various countries will produce. Both things on video, on TV, on movies and that kind of stuff. How much do other people all around the world consume that kind of stuff? And again, we get very well-known names all over the world. People who know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is. Sylvester Stallone. John Travolta. Just give me a signal tonight. Give me a signal tonight.
巷のリクエスト
Tokyo Drink.
Bruce Willis.
タケコプター調子悪くてさ。なんだよ。ドラえもんだ。
ドラえもん？
引っ越してきた。
ドラえもんには見えないけど。
僕ドラえもん。
ドラえもんには見えない。
どう見てもドラえもんだろう。
引っ越しはお隣。
マジかよ。失礼しました。
They're all, these are very very famous people, who have very sociable characters and different roles in movies and that kind of stuff that many people in the world, other than in the United States and in Western culture, know about. Okay, so that's an example of a U.S. soap opera in that case. The other things that you would think of is cuisine, food. What is U.S. America known for in other parts of the world for, and then you think of all the things that they have in their food. They're famous for things like mac and cheese, potato chips, popcorn, nachos, the concept of Thanksgiving dinner. Lots of shall we say, snacking foods and that kind of stuff, and particularly not particularly good foods for you. It usually comes up in that sort of thing. So that's that's one example of your soft opera. So again, this is an episode. Again, I want to talk about the influence of both Japanese and Chinese soft opera, because obviously that's what I'm more into. That's what's the crux of this episode. So this is sort of an introduction of how you would apply it to, let's say, American culture. Now let's apply the same things to Japanese culture. So Japan is also, like many things, and I'd argue probably more than even a place like China, has exerted way more and a lot more soft power all over the world as well. Of course, not maybe as much as the Americans have, but definitely their place in the world as a major market player is definitely there. So again, same thing. You think of Japanese brands, okay? First thing that usually comes to mind, Sony, Panasonic, Mitsubishi, very classic, electronics names. I mean, I definitely could say, I've had a Sony Discman, a Sony Walkman. I've had several Sony VCRs. Panasonic makes some of the best VCRs, SVHS VCRs back then. I'd had those Mitsubishi SVHS editing decks. Many of us probably had Sony TVs back in the day, right? You also think of big names like Nintendo and Namco and Capcom. Think of all the games that those guys have put out in the last little while. So again, lots of big names there. You can probably also think of things like a Honda, very, very popular car manufacturer all over the world as well. So, again, very big brand name. Usually we think of higher end quality and that kind of stuff. Because electronics and that kind of stuff. We think to Japan for that thing, and that's one of the things that they are really strong on. We can continue on, and we think about how Japanese music has influence. Yumi Hamasaki, very, very famous, especially in the club scene. During her rise in fame and that kind of stuff, especially around like the album M and things like that. She had a lot of like dance remixes and that kind of stuff, and club mixes and other things made to her music and that kind of stuff, and that proliferated all through the dance scene, and very, very influential in that circle. You can also think of bands like Onsen Shitai, Nami Moro, Hikaru Utada. A lot of not maybe so much influence in the Western world, but definitely around in the Asian world. Because Hikaru Utada did a lot of songs in Korean as well. Onsen Shitai had a lot of influence in Hong Kong and Chinese music and that kind of stuff, because Alan Tam and whatnot. So definitely they had their influences, of and above and beyond their borders of Japan, because obviously you would think, I said, who else would be interested in Japanese music other than Japanese people? And obviously, if you get people in, let's say, Korea and North America and dance clubs and that kind of stuff interested in music, that just gives you an indication how much popular pull that comes in. Okay. Now, of course, the next category is the screen, and obviously, that's why you're all part of here. One of the biggest influences, that Japanese has pushed on let's just say popular culture is anime. I mean, even ever since even the 1980s, right, when anime really started taking off, here in North America, we were just gobbling that stuff up as fast as we could get our hands on it, and even as hard as it was to consume, because the major thing about entertainment is the translation. You have to sort of understand what's going on in the plot. Music, so not so much. I mean, you can there's still many songs that I listen to in Japanese, which I don't even know what the full translation of a lot of the songs are. I could pick out a couple words here and there, and I could pick out a couple phrases here and there. But in terms of what the entire song's about, I wouldn't know. But I would still listen to it because the music's nice, the singing's nice, the arrangement, the composition. I'm one of my favorite artists and that kind of stuff. I would still listen to it, right? Movies are a little bit harder, but still, when we were watching anime at this time, even when the rise of anime and that kind of stuff, it was very, we would still consume it, even with the problems of Japanese translation. Of course, now with technology and that kind of stuff, with the ways that we fan sub stuff, we made it easier to consume, and we made it a bigger part of our genre. And now Japanese anime is a big part of the subgenres in a lot of countries, not just here in North America, but obviously in a lot of Western parts, as well as in France. I know Brazil had things like Shirado and that kind of stuff. I know down in the Southeast Asia, they had a whole anime network called AXN, which covered the Philippines and Malaysia and that kind of stuff. And they did all this great anime like Rurouni Kenshin and Flame Eureka, Red Hooded Cha-Cha. All those were all played on that particular network. And so I had, and basically, I had a couple of VHS tapes of English dubbed from AXN. So that was really, really cool. So that gives you an idea that the influence that that Japanese culture has is things like anime, of course, and the manga too. Don't forget that manga also extends to that too. But also, Japanese culture also brings us a lot of things like they brought us Godzilla. They brought us things like a lot of samurai flicks like Lone Wolf and Cub and Zatoichi and all this other stuff. Whenever we think of samurais and that kind of stuff, and ninjas and that kind of stuff, those are all things that were brought on by the Japanese culture. Okay. And so next one, of course, is another big, huge influence is what kind of foods that we know for. And of course, we over here can go to like a Japanese restaurant or a food court and that kind of stuff, and we have a lot of Japanese foods and icons in our regular lexicon. I mean, a lot of people are already familiar with words like sushi and sashimi. Japanese curry is always really a really popular thing. All the different types of noodles, ramen, soba, udon, tempura, gyoza, of course, is something that many cultures have. But again, a lot of people find that very popular in basically Japanese culture. And of course, the all famous starting of miso soup. Is also very, very common. And of course, and that I can continue on with lots of other branded products. The other one that comes to mind right away is Pocky by Glico. It's a very famous candy that originates from Japan. So their influence is really, really strong and very, very very powerful and very, very outreaching. Okay, probably more so than most other ones. Now, again, I can cover things like Korea. Obviously, is another up and coming one that has many of the same things going for it. But I'm gonna sort of flip the table. I'm gonna go the other way now, and I'm gonna go over some countries that don't have very high soft power, and then we'll just sort of wrap it up for that. Another country that I have a little more experience in, because I am Chinese, is obviously China. Now, a lot of people are going to comment with the rising power of China and all that kind of stuff. They're going to be the next big superpower and maybe overtaking that the U.S. and all of their stuff. And I think that's personally I think that's baloney. Mainly because China itself does not exert very much soft power, as it were. Like, no one cares about the crap from China. All right, that's usually the thing. That's usually the concept of it. So let's kind of use the same process through this, right? So when we think of China, what kind of brands do we think of? And so the biggest names that sort of come out of China in this sense is Tencent. Okay, obviously the guys who make various different sort of softwares and that kind of stuff, and the underlying company that sort of bought a whole bunch of shares into a whole bunch of different things. Huawei, obviously, again. In the modern day now, if I had to rank cell phone companies, you obviously do things like Apple, then probably Samsung, and then underneath that, probably then you're going to be your LGs and your whatever Nokias, if they even make phones anymore, and then maybe as I said, Huawei and maybe Google phones and that kind of stuff, at the bottom of the list, right? I mean, it's pretty, whatever. Lenovo computers, everyone always thought those were like IBM clones back in the day anyway, so not really great idea, great sense in that. Hisense, Midea, they make lots of appliances and that kind of stuff. But you can see that nothing really sticks out as something wow, that's not like there are no big names like a Sony or a Panasonic and out there that covers a lot of different mediums, different products, and different things like that. One of the biggest stigmatisms that China has is the "made in China" stereotype, or this thing. Basically, the concept that it's cheap crap that's basically being either the product of IP theft and all this other stuff, and knockoffs and whatnot, right? That's the problem with lack of quality control, counterfeit parts and that kind of stuff. It's all that's the idea that really rings through a lot of people's mind when you hear the "made in China" prop there. Okay. That's one of the problems of that. Again, that's something that they've got to lose, right? So it's and I don't think they'll without some major changes, we'll kind of shake that. Okay. So let's talk about music. Okay. So again, if you do a search and you look for some popular Chinese musical artists, okay. Some of the top ones that come right up to mind are Fei Wang. Obviously, she does the Final Fantasy song there. Teresa Teng. Heck, I remember even when I went over to my wife's to meet my wife, and I looked at her TV audio collection, and even she had a box set of Teresa Teng songs. She, and as well as Fei Wang, falls into the category of Hong Kong artists. Okay, to distinguish the difference. Cantonese, which is usually spoken in the Hong Kong area, is only spoken in 15% of the population of China, where the other 85% is speaking Mandarin. Okay, and again, let's note the differences, because most of the stuff that's popular as Chinese stuff is from Hong Kong, which is which was freer to do stuff under British rule than it was when the CCP took it over, and now probably virtually everything that comes out of there is now going to be crap. Okay, propaganda and that kind of stuff. Okay, which again turns a lot of people off, and that's probably why they're going to lose all their soft power for sure. When I look at Screen, okay, this is another problem. See, again, most of the most famous movies, things that people think of when they think of Chinese movies, originate from the Hong Kong side, not the Mandarin mainstream mainland China stuff. Okay, and you think of famous Chinese actors in your mind. Okay, you think of Chow Yun-fat, you think of things like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, Leslie Chan, Andy Lau, all these things. These are all Hong Kong artists. Okay, so I'm grouping them with Hong Kong / the British rule, democratic Hong Kong. Okay, where they had the freedom, they had the things to do that kind of stuff, right? The only one sort of emerging artist that sort of maybe rises above that comes out of the China would be Jet Li. Okay, but as you can see, it's probably other people of his caliber and that sort of fame level that comes out of China from the mainland part of China is very few. Okay, other than people like, as I said, Chow Yun-fat and Jackie Chan, who's gone on to create so much more stuff, even in the Western field. Again, I guess Bruce Lee too, I suppose. The names of Chinese artists, are far and few between, as it were. Okay, by comparison. And again, just because a lot of people just do not like to consume that particular style of that sort of propaganda, if you will, or that sort of angle on those type of movies. Okay, just that's just one of the things that they've got to shake. And I don't know if with the way that the government controls things, that will ever happen. Okay, so the last part is food, obviously. Now, when I grew up, my parents ran a Chinese restaurant. Okay, and like always, and I think like a lot of people, especially immigrants and that kind of stuff, we adapt. Okay, there is some people who obviously when they migrate over here, one of the first things they do is they when running a restaurant, you don't worry about trying to make authentic Chinese food, because obviously here, living in a different country, obviously other than China, that a lot of people probably are not really interested in eating what original sort of authentic Chinese food would be, because they eat some pretty strange stuff, and maybe hard to get, or rather kind of strange. Like the delicacies like chicken feet and pig's blood and all this kind of stuff may turn a lot of people off, right? So they have to make improvisions and slight changes to the recipe to make it sort of more, first of all, easier to create, make, cheaper to make, make the ingredients easier to come by, and make something up. So again, a lot of I'm finding a lot of Chinese food and a lot of Asian food, that kind of stuff, is what I refer to fusion food, or in the day we call it Lao Fan food, which is basically white man's Chinese food. And that's where you get these things called, things like, General Tao's chicken, which is just, it's just a, we don't use those type of spicings on regular chicken, for example. All the variations of what we know as fried rice, okay? Because obviously in Western fried rice, we tend to add a lot more eggs and that kind of stuff than when you would normally do. We have a lot more different kinds of meat, and that kind of stuff, rather than just using Chinese sausages and whatnot. But things like that are occurred. The whole entire concept of a fortune cookie does not originate from China. They don't use that kind of thing. That was something that was invented over here. Deep fried spring rolls. One of my favorite things when I grew up, when I at my parents' restaurant, was deep fried egg rolls. Okay. And especially the ones with the bean sprouts and that kind of stuff in it. But again, that was a Lao Fan creation. Okay, that's something that's not normally done in in China, or even in Hong Kong for that matter, at that time. Okay, the whole entire thing of sweet and sour sauce. Okay, because obviously the way that the recipe is usually done up. Usually requires a rice vinegar of some sort. So a lot of times in restaurant making, we just substitute with just regular vinegar, and in order to get that sort of sweetness and still keep that little bit of a sour taste, a lot of things that we did, we just substituted using ketchup, and that's why it turns a little bit of red or a little bit orange when you make it, and so. That's one of those adaptations that we did just to make things easier. Like, obviously a regular Chinese cookie doesn't do that. Those are one of those type of things that, but again, in a lot of cultures, we are familiar with, fast food, fast Chinese food takeout, Chinese takeout boxes in those little, white containers. those are all kind of things that we think about when we think of Chinese food. So again, that's one of the things that they import over. But again, a lot of those things are just modifications, or should I say fusionation, if you will, or fusions with other cultures' food and products to make them easier to make. So in many ways, they're bastardized, if you will, versions of what they would be authentic Chinese food, for example. And the Hong Kong food is also different than what mainland food is as well, too. So, because I said, I noticed that when I went to my wife's city in Shenyang, a lot of the foods were a lot more spicier. They bed a lot of stuff in peppers and that kind of stuff. So maybe like a chicken or something would be placed on a bed of like dried peppers and that kind of stuff. So all the oils and that kind of stuff would seep into the chicken and make it nice and spicy that way. So that's something that's not commonly important unless you go to a as I said, more of an authentic Chinese sort of restaurant. And again, that's something that's adapted. Quote, they adapted using things like General Tao's chicken or whatever thing of that, or spicy Chinese chicken or whatever it is, right? Again, that's one of those type of things that shall we say, a lot of Chinese things are adapted as opposed to imported. Like so if you think of, let's say, Japanese food, other than things like, for example, like a California roll, most sushis are basically created and designed the same way that, for example, that a Japanese sushi roll would be made. Okay, so just to finish this off, to just give you another example of how another country, soft power is really limited, giving an indication of how little people are interested in that particular country's culture or whatever. Also basically detracts on how they're perceived in the world. Okay, so I'm going to look at Russia as another example of a total aristocratic sort of culture. Let's see how they fare on the world stage, right? Again, so we'll go through the same process. When you think of Russia, what kind of brands do you think of? Well, of the many different sort of things that they business-wise they have, the biggest ones that you probably will be familiar with is Smirnoff, okay, which is obviously they make lots of vodka and that kind of stuff, and the aircraft company Aeroflot, okay. Now, of course, again, there's lots of bigger names. Obviously, things like Boeing, Lockheed, for example, are probably bigger names than the Aeroflot would be. But I mean, that is their air company. Okay, so nothing really else that sort of kind of touches anyone else's market other than that, right? We go to music. There's very few things in the modern music scene that the people care in Russia. I've come up with two examples. There's the two female bands, Tattoo and New Virgos. Okay, now again, if you haven't heard of these people, it doesn't surprise me. Tattoo is a I personally never heard of until they were featured on an episode, a Japanese episode of Music Station, where they were basically introduced onto the stage at the beginning of the show as one of their guests. Okay, they're two basically female singers, and when they came on the Music Station, they appealed to the Japanese market by dressing up in schoolgirl uniforms with the short skirts, and they're kissing each other and all this other stuff and whatnot, and eventually got themselves pulled off the station. And they actually never performed on that episode. One of these days, if I find that clip, I'll put that on there.
Не хочу больше играть. Все.
Ой, まだ試合終わってねえぞ。ほら、機嫌直して。
Возможно, уже больше.
こいつら腹減るとタトゥーみたいにわがままになるんだ。ほら、スニッカーズ。どう？
お腹が空いたらスニッカーズ。
え、バッターも。
but yeah, so that's what they're known for. So they have enough influence to actually show up on Japanese TV, even though they sing that particular version. The other band that I pulled out, and again I never knew about it until I basically went into China and was buying different DVDs and that kind of stuff and whatnot, and they showed up on a dance CD that I picked up. They're known for the version of a song called "Stop Stop Stop," that they was very very popular in China, especially again on the dance scene. And again, they're not technically from Russia; they're actually technically from Ukraine. But again, of the famous people that have had popular media, so they obviously got on the market. And when you watch the music video for that, you will know why. Okay. The other story that I have to bring up is that one of the ideas or the concepts is that during the time when I was talking online and meeting my wife back in 2004, one of the big things at that time, and probably at the same time when things like Tattoo and New Virgos was out, was this whole thing that people wanted to leave Russia. Okay, so there was this whole thing about the Russian brides. They were using the internet to try to find suitors from overseas to basically get them out of Russia and whatnot. So there's this big whole thing about the Russian brides thing going on during the 2000s at that time. And that's probably one of those things that kind of gives you an indication if no one wants to stay in your country, and the idea is to try to leave and flight, then things are probably not that good over there. So that's probably not one of the the soft power ideas that you want to leave with the rest of the world, that no one wants to be in your country. Okay. Anyway, so to continue on, so what people do they know from the screen? Who are famous from Russia? Well, there's very few Russian movies that anyone really cares about, and for the odd ones or two that kind of show up, sort of end up as science fiction B movies or like these art flicks that sort of come up. So nothing really suitable. But in terms of famous people, all of them usually come from sports. Okay, Maria Sharapova, the tennis player, and Alexander Ovechkin, the hockey player, are probably the most famous modern day sort of athletes that they have out there. Of course, I'm sure there's lots of famous Olympic athletes, but in terms of popular sports and that kind of stuff, those would be probably your biggest names for sure. But yeah, no really actresses and no really too many musical artists that really come to mind when you think of Russia. And the last sort of thing is food. And again, other than ethnically speaking, most people don't know very many Russian foods, and probably the first one that will probably come to mind, if one comes to mind, is of course borscht. That's probably the only thing that is commonly known, but maybe not very many people know they can get served or actually find out who actually makes this stuff. Okay. Again, that just gives an indication that no one really likes the cuisine over there. So, again, that's another idea, another indication of how some countries just have virtually no other influence of things that they can offer to the rest of the world that the people want to actually consume in any way, whether or not it's entertainment or food, or products for that matter. Okay. All right, so I hope you find this kind of interesting. Like I said, typically I don't like to talk about politics and that kind of stuff, not because I said everyone has their own opinion about different things. But again, just to sort of this sort of fell into my lap again, because of just the different things that are happening politically in the world today. And one of the things that someone was pointed out that of the rising power of certain countries and that kind of stuff, like China, and how they may overtake certain countries as a global power, and this whole entire conversation of soft power came in, their influence on other countries and that kind of stuff. And basically, when you look at it in the broader scope, some of these other countries that supposedly are on the rise, really don't have that much, shall we say, influential push, to other countries, because there's nothing that they export to them, culturally, and and their economics don't export very well to the world. So that's just sort of something I just wanted to touch on in terms of at least Japan and China for sure, just because that's where my little point of axis is and my focus is. So hope you find that sort of educational and sort of kind of a point to think about next time you sort of think about how your country's things sort of influence the world. And then basically when you go traveling and you look at things in a different country, see what else has been carried over to the other country. So anyway, so I'll get more episodes coming up with the top 30 anime showdown for the 1980s. We'll continue more of those as coming up really soon. So stay tuned for those. All right. So until next time, I will see you